Hello, I'm Jeff Gould, America's Storyteller. Thank you for joining us on this live broadcast. So, why do we do this live? Well, it's a chance for us to get all our people in the room, get everything done in an efficient way. Then we distribute it out in segments on the various social media platforms, and then invite everybody to come back again, whether as guests or viewers. So, like, subscribe, comment, share. That's your job in the show. My job is to give you some chapters that are going to make this an interesting show to begin with. So, we'll talk about whether it's terrible or typical out there. We'll bring in Dwayne, our home builder. We'll get some ideas from him on how to fix that nasty toilet. What in the heck is wrong with the leaky toilets of the world? Why can't they? How come they can put a man on the moon, but they can't fix a toilet? We'll talk about bringing Asian carp into the delicacy part of your room, of your palette, of the kitchen table. Silverfin. We'll talk about turbine battery charging off of wind turbines. We'll also have some tips from a man who learned the hard way how to get through a summer. And I mean the hard way by shearing 1,000 sheep. We'll go through the movie The Outfit, which is a tremendous movie. We'll get to that. And of course, we'll get to your comments on the mailbag. So before we go any further, let's get to our first chapter, chapter one. Terrible or typical? Well, I've been seeing this and hearing comments about what's going on in the world today. Well, this is terrible. Or is it typical? Okay. As an exercise, let me just talk about what we have seen going on ever since we've seen things going on, recorded history. I asked my wife, I said, tell you what, Libby, just give me some numbers at random. Pick between the numbers 1 and 2. And then she selected a century or a millennia. And then I said, well, now pick the numbers between 1 and 100. And she picked these dates. So let's roll, shall we? Let's look at the year 1265. And is that year unusually terrible or is it typical? Well, if we look at that year 1265, we see the Mongol hordes knocking on the doorstep. That's not a good day. It's never a good day when the Mongol hordes are knocking on of the door of civilization. We go to the year 1664. Oh no, look at this. Another invasion, this time not just across Europe, as some people are Turks this time coming across to invade Europe. Now we have a war that's going on in the United States. Those pesky Hollanders are in what's New York right now, and the British are trying to drive them out, and the people who are caught in the middle are wondering what is going to happen next. We go to the year 1933. A friend of mine who was talking about how terrible things are today. I said, Dell, when were you born? He said 1933. I said, what was going on in 1933? He said, well, the Depression. Yeah. Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. Build up of titularian, of dictator, the buildup of dictatorships in Europe. Yes, of course. All of that in 1933. The Dust Bowl. We're getting into the drought season in the middle of the country. That was going on in 1933. I went to the year I was born, 1961. Not a good time if you were a little kid because they were telling you to duck and cover, get underneath your desks because when the bomb hits, that's what was going to save you, except did anybody really believe that? Probably the biggest story going on in 1961 was when were we going to have an atomic war? It is astonishing to historians that we didn't have one before the end of last century. We've gone to the year 2025, and so far, no atomic war. Now, so far. And now we go to today. And people say, well, yeah, that was then, but this is now. This is terrible. Hmm. Or is it typical? So I heard somebody speak to this verse. I don't know if you've heard this. It's from Micah. What does the Lord your God require of you but to um, seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God? It's a nice verse, looks good on a plaque. How exactly do I do that? Oh, yes. I'll get to this verse of Gloria Gaynor. We'll get to that at the end after I wrap up this verse, okay? All right. So the verse talks about three things. First is seeking justice. Well, we happen to live in a country that is doing as good as anybody has doing this because we've spread out the responsibility to four different groups of people, right? We have you and I who vote for legislators to make laws that are as just as possible as we try to seek justice. Then we have people whose job it is to enforce those laws. Those are the police. And then we have judges whose job is to adjudicate on that rule or law to see if it was fair in the first place or whether it was handled fairly. And then, of course, you and I get a chance to complain about it. That's called freedom of the speech. And we get a chance to vote out those old guys or get them to make new legislation. So, what happens is we're all tugging and pulling on this way. If we stay in our lane, this particular system that we have in the United States of America is as good as you are going to get if everybody does their job in seeking justice, which brings us to the second verse, part of the verse, to love mercy or love kindness. Well, why do we want to do that? Well, as I said earlier in other podcasts, we're flawed. And I don't mean we're just not perfect. I mean, we're deeply flawed. I'm running at about a 40% failure rate, and that's being generous. And if you're like me, and you are, that means we have a strong failure rate. And that's why we love mercy. So when the cop pulls us over and we're speeding, because we were speeding, and the cop looks at us and says, well, I'll give you a warning. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we love that. We love that mercy. And when the kid wrecks the car, just like you did back in the day, and you remember, well, then you say, well, I've been there. And the child loves mercy. And so, as failed people, if we do our job right, we are following the law and at the same time giving people a little slack because we're all broken people. And the last one is to walk humbly with your God. See, we're not in control, never have been. And when we let God do what God is supposed to do, well, then he does what he's supposed to do, and we are humbly letting him do that. Here's the analogy I give. I don't know if it was a dream or how it came to me, but the plane has landed. I'm in an airport. I get in a taxi and I'm going to my next destination. Only I've never been to this town. I have no idea where I'm at. It's a winding course. The cabbie is meandering around potholes. It's stormy outside. I hear these noises. It's scary. It's jolting around. He's driving quickly. He's making zigs and zags. I'm in the back seat. And finally, I lean forward and I'm saying, look, what are you doing now? What are you doing? Even though I have no idea where we are, I'm trying to give him instructions. So anyway, I catch him looking back at me in the rearview mirror. Well, it's Jesus Christ. And he looks at me and raises an eyebrow and says, do you mind? And then I sit back and I say, okay, I'm not in control. You're driving the car. If we seek justice by following the rules we're given, changing the rules however we can make them change to make it more just, if we love mercy by giving a little bit of grace to each other, and if we walk humbly with God, knowing that he's running the whole show anyway, isn't that a great way to realize how we can engage in a world that seems every year to be terrible? So let's pull up this verse from the Gaithers. So the Gaithers are famous gospel singers, and you wouldn't believe this, but yeah, but Gail Gaither is Gloria Gaither, I should say, is woman of faith. She's just given birth to her son. The year is 1970, 71, and she is mortified. Why? Because, like any young mother, she has given birth to a child who has fallen into the darkness that we call life on earth these days. And she is terrified. And she's saying, we're coming up in the Vietnam War. What have I done to this poor child? And then uh, she comes up to the words of this song, how sweet to hold a newborn baby. Hmm. And then, because he lives, I can face tomorrow. So we have a mother who realizes that we're in a dark place. and she serves a great God. And Because He Lives has been sung ever since then throughout the world. And it's a calming note to those of us who are wondering, are we living in terrible times or typical times? That's chapter one. All right. Chapter two, let's bring in Dwayne Bickett. Dwayne, how you doing today?
Doing
Show,
great, thanks.
show him the goatee. So he has trimmed it down, and he's given the excess to Goatees of Goodness, which is a charitable event for bikers who don't
Guys
have
that
good
need
facial
white
care,
beards. Yeah.
who don't have facial hair, giving it to Santas who are going to the mall and don't have enough of the white stuff. So I want to appreciate your donation, Dwayne. Okay. Chapter two. Are you ready? Here's our question for
Ready.
Dwayne. Dwayne, you're going to spend 2 months anywhere, anytime in the world. You can go past, you can go present, you can go future. Now, when you go there, there is no guarantee you're going to survive to make it back. So that's part of your decision making process. So, where are you going to go? When are you going to go?
Like right now or next week
Sure.
or
I mean, yeah. I mean, as
anyway.
soon as the show's over,
Okay.
you're jumping in.
I'm jumping in my time machine. Well, that was I've given that some thought, and I narrowed it down to two. The first one would be during the movie Lonesome Dove, spending the time on the range working the cattle. Very simple time as long as you stay out of the river that's full of the copperhead
That's
snakes.
exactly the scene I
The
was
other
thinking
thing would
of. Oh,
be,
no.
yeah, yeah. But the other one that I guess I probably kind of
Okay,
landed on
now wait a
was,
second. You're saying you'd
and
go
this
on a
is
cattle
not,
drive. You're saying you'd go on a cattle drive. That's what you do. That's one
that's
of them.
one of my options.
Okay.
But the second one was the one I kind of settled on, and that is in that time period of about 1976, 77, 78. And the reason for that was the I was I was a senior in high school in the fall of 1976. So let's start back about 1975. Vietnam War was winding down. A lot of the guys were coming back. I lived in a neighborhood that was overwhelmingly blue collar. A lot of my dad's brothers, or all of my dad's brothers, I should say, he had 8 brothers, had served in the military in some certain branch. A lot of the people in my neighborhood worked for the South Dakota Air Guard because we lived very close to that on the north end of Sioux Falls.
Hmm.
But the civil rights movement was cooled down. It wasn't the protests and everything we saw that. Vietnam War was coming to an end. Things were looking pretty good. I had already had my first job in construction. I remember at that time I was making $3 an hour, and I had
Wow.
more money than I could spend. I could go have all the fun I wanted to have and still put money in the bank every single week. The cars were better, the music was better, the fun was better, and the statute of limitations is gone on most of those stories, so we can tell them. I remember at my dad's memorial service, a really good friend of mine who didn't have a dad and kind of adopted my dad as his. He wanted to speak, and I said, I don't really think that's a good idea. But he was good. I and he said some of the things that's a good idea. We did. Yeah. He goes that your dad found out about her in a car. But we can save that for another time. That's a long-winded, but extremely funny story. But anyway, he would get on Mike something terrible because of some of the things we had done and some of the car races we'd had through town when Sioux Falls wasn't quite as big.
So you want to go back to
He
those
got up
days?
there and he was going, would I?
Yeah. Is that
Yes,
what you're saying?
in a minute.
You want to go to the glory days,
Yes. That's what I would choose. Yes.
and you would
Because
go
as
as
Mike said, as he
you would go as you now, decrepit old you observing.
no, I
Are
want to
you?
go back as me then.
Oh,
I,
oh.
I want to
Well,
go back and relive that.
Yeah, that
Is that the
wasn't
point
meant.
of the
Well,
exercise,
let
or
me
am I
see
supposed to go
here. Let
back
me
as I am
check this
now?
now. You will spend 2 months anytime. I didn't say what your age was. All right, you get a pass, but that wasn't
Okay.
it wasn't so you could go back and relive crimes, my friend. That wasn't the purpose of this
No, no, it was
exercise.
okay, then I wanna go back knowing what I know now, but I wanna be younger,
Oh,
back
okay.
when I
All
had
right.
hair. But 'cause well, I guess let's turn that around then. I could go back now, but then I would be my father, and then
Right.
I'd be trying to figure out what these 2 clowns were doing all the time.
And then you'd
So,
lose your hair.
anyway,
That's how you'd yeah,
a
yeah.
you know what? I think I might have been a contributor to that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I just think that the future, I don't really have, a lot of urge to have a flying car or a spaceship or, have a robot that does everything that you can do. And I guess mostly I'm just pretty happy where I'm at. But
Yeah.
if it was going to be, if it was going to be a fantasy, it would be back in the cattle drive days. If it was going to be the best times, it would be in the mid 1970s.
Well, because it's only 2 months, I'm a little trepidatious. I really don't want to go into the future because what if it's bad? And then I got to come back here and tell everybody, right? And then I got to think of my grandkids and go, oh, sorry, kid. About 20 years from now, I don't want that. You know what I was thinking of because of all the movies and because I speak a little bit of German. I would like to spend 2 months in Munich in the 1936 Olympic caliber to watch the Olympics in the height of the evil regime of the Nazis because I want to see what that was like on the streets and what that all was about. I just think that would be interesting. Hmm. All right. Chapter 2 gone to a close. Chapter 3. So this is our genius ideas. Actually, my genius ideas. Dwayne hasn't come up with any genius ideas yet. His day is coming. My job is to give you two genius ideas, and then you're to vote on these throughout the program. And then we'll find out which genius idea makes the muster. And remember, the purpose of these genius ideas is to make you, the viewer, a multi-millionaire. I have genius ideas so many times throughout the day, I cannot be bothered to make the billions of dollars. Plus, I'm getting older. I don't see the value in money, but you do. So these are your genius ideas. First, wind turbine battery chargers. If you drive up and down the interstate, you'll see these wind turbines, and they're everywhere. Sometimes they're spinning, and sometimes they're not. I asked a friend of mine who is in the grid, who's looking at all the energy. The reason that those wind turbines aren't turning isn't about the wind. He said there's only so much electricity that can be allowed on the grid at any point, and if you get too much, you'll overheat it and you'll burn it out. So the simplest things to shut down are the wind turbines. So this is my idea. These wind turbines continue to spin, only they charge up batteries similar to like the liquid propane tank you see at the gas station, right? Only these are like suitcase sized batteries, and they charge those up and then they send them on a semi down to the local gas station. And then you can take those and plug those into your vehicle. If you have a 100% electric vehicle, God bless you, here you go. If you don't, you can just use these to surplus your ride. If you got lawn mowers or other kind of equipment, same kind of thing. These suitcase sized batteries are like D cell or whatever size batteries are common universal sizes. And you just plug them in, and thereby we get more use off the turbines. And that is my first genius idea. Second genius idea. You ready? Profiting off invading
Ready.
species. So we are aware that the Asian carp is making its way up the Mississippi River. Here is something I didn't realize until I saw a video on it. When you take a speedboat and go full throttle down the river, they jump out of the water about like 3, 4 feet high out of the water. and it looks like porpoises. They're everywhere. It's kind of disconcerting that these are everywhere, and this is my plan. This is my genius plan to capture these and create a feeding frenzy for all people who like to experiment with food. Okay. You got two guys in a speedboat. They're towing behind them on water skis two other guys with a big tennis net. And then when the boats go running through at high throttle, the Asian carp jump up and they're caught in the tennis net. And then they're put in big 55-gallon drums. Super fast way to capture these invading species. Then all we do is we have feeding frenzies. So, like Friday Night Fish Fry, only it's not Asian carp. We call it silverfin. By the way, that's out there already. They're changing the name of Asian carp to silverfin. Sounds so much better. We have different kinds of recipes. It's all you can eat. It's $2 for all you can eat of silverfin. Who doesn't want to gorge on a Friday Night Fish Fry, taking care of the invasive species and filling ourselves with cheap fish all at the same time? That is my second genius idea. Dwayne, your vote does not count, but looking at these two and
Usually
these two
it doesn't around
concepts,
my house. I know that.
right? So, which one of these genius ideas do you like?
Well, as you were showing your visual of the battery chargers, I'm thinking to myself, if they're, obviously you've got them scaled down, why not just put that charger on the top of your car? You'd never have to stop. If you put that charger that's continually charging, this is a perpetual motion machine, never been invented.
What now?
It's never been protected.
That is your genius idea. What'd you waste it on this segment for? Man, that's a good idea. Especially in South Dakota, you could go one way with the wind. Well, anyway, this is for other parts of the country. Some people don't have the wind that we do here. Some people have more wind, if you can imagine that. Okay, that's our genius idea. We'll vote on that when we get to the
Inside
end
the
of the
studio tonight, there's a lot of wind.
show. Let's move on to our fourth chapter, Behind the Curtain, with Dwayne Bickett. You like that, Dwayne? This is before we figured out you
Yeah.
were going to trim your goatee, but there we go. So that's Behind the Curtain.
But that actually came because of a near miss. That's why that's shorter now.
Right. So my question earlier was this: have you ever used a wood lathe, and is that the reason why you had to trim your goatee short?
No, it was a belt sander actually last
Ooh.
week. That's why I say it was a near miss, but it was close enough for me.
Wow. Wow. Have you ever had your beard plucked by a machinery?
No, and
Not
that's
yet.
why I look like I do tonight,
Right. Okay.
because I don't want to.
So let's go behind the curtain, and this is the purpose of this show. One of the purposes of this show is for me to use a subtle way to get free advice from Dwayne on all my issues around my house that I'm suffering with, on the possible chance that you're having the same issue. But if you're not, who cares? I'm still getting good advice. So I've got two toilets, and the flushing mechanisms are starting to wear out. I thought easy peasy. I went to a local place that specializes in toiletry stuff, in plumbing supplies, and I said I need to replace the guts of my toilet. And he said, "Well, what kind is it?" I said, "Well, it's white." And he said, "No, no, no." Anyway, he then proceeded to tell me that there were so many different kinds of interiors of toilets. And until I took a picture and took a model number and the manufacturer, there is no way he could recommend what he would put or recommend that I put in my toilet to make it flush. Okay. Is he throwing a little shade? Or is he accurate, Dwayne? Are they that complex? They all look the same to me.
Well, nowadays, we've got they don't even call it a low flow toilet anymore because they're all like that. Back in the conversion times in the late 80s and early 90s, we had toilets invented, ironically, by a man named Thomas Crepper. That is a true story. But we had toilets that would use three, three and a half. Some of remember the old wall hung tank that was way up over your head and you had a
Yes.
chain to flush the
Hmm.
toilet. Some of those could hold up to 5 gallons of water. And then they said, man, you guys are really wasting a lot of water. We're going to put really smart people in this and we're going to keep the exact same thing, only we're going to make it better. And they came out with the low flow toilet, and it's amazing how they almost had the American Revolution over that genius idea because the early ones did not work
Hmm.
because the toilet operation probably from the early 30s when when only probably the mega in the big cities actually had water flush toilets were it's just to where you could use any amount of water you wanted because water was cheap, water was available, water was everything. So there was no hurry, there was no problem, there was no anything as far as water conservation. Well, then cities started getting bigger. We started looking at what are we going to do with all this water that gets flushed. So they said, let's cut the water flow down. So they said, all right, we're going to keep everything the same. We're just going to cut down the volume. And for a long time, it was called put a brick in your tank. If you put a brick in your
Yes,
toilet tank, it
I remember
displaced
this.
some of the water you didn't use
Yeah,
as much.
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
But in the early days of the low flow toilets, they came out with the uh, the interior workings were not the same as what they were back in the old days because if you remember back to the
So let's pull up that
drawing that
graphic
was up,
again here.
the flapper.
Okay. So we're going to pull up this
Okay,
guy. This.
so
So if I'm just trying to remember my old toilet, it had something that looked like about the size. It was a ball. It floated. It had a lever on it, and as the water raised, it would gradually shut off the water. And if it started to not work over time, you'd bend that bar a little bit so it would
mhm.
create more pressure. And this was the way toilets worked for a long period of time. And then I had to replace mine for whatever reason. And they said, well, you don't want that. You want these new ones that have all these different kinds of levers and lifters and water fill valve, blah blah blah. And I guess the question is, how long does the inside of one of these things last? Because it seems to me like they sure do wear out in a hurry. All right. So I go into the hardware store. I'm thinking, I know what I have in my house. It's a universal fit because that's what it said in the box the last time I bought it. And I walk in there again, and the guy says, well, no, I need to know what kind of toilet it is. And he proceeds to lift the top off of the back of all of these tanks. And although they have some similarities, there are surprising differences on each one. So in my house, I have two of these. If I pull the lever on the tank, and Mr. Homeowner, exactly what I'm talking about, Mrs. Homeowner. When you pull that lever, you got to hold it just right and then let it gently up again. If you just let it go sproing, somehow that little chain, which is impossible to attach when you're installing it, immediately flips off, and then the thing doesn't stop running. So you have to open it up and clear the tank and hook it up again. Now, that's what's going on in the one in the lower level. Up in the upper level, something's wrong with the lubrication of it, I guess, because as it's filling it up, it goes psh, psh. It doesn't just fill up continually, it fills up in 5-second gasps until after 20 minutes goes by, and then finally it's filled. Does it work? Yes. Do I need to replace it? I guess not, but it's driving me crazy. So I think I should replace it. I go into the hardware store and they say, well, now you need some sort of special gizmo to get that special. I need to take a picture of the tank. I need to take a picture of the model number. I need to know what kind it is and bring that in. And then they will tell me exactly what kind of mechanism I need to put inside the toilet. So my questions, Dwayne, what is it going to cost for me to put this inside the toilet? Do I need to get some sort of super industrial kind? Because I'm happy, Dwayne. I'm happy paying three times the amount so I don't ever have to replace it again. But I don't know that that's possible. And of all of the thousands of suggestions out there, you, as a guy who is in the industry from behind the curtain, you must have a suggestion for what you would recommend so I don't have to make the choices.
The biggest issue I think of anything, and it's not just toilets, it's everything, is most of those internal workings are going to be plastic. They're not made out of brass anymore. They're not made out of copper. They're made out of plastic. And to say that, we're going to spend whatever we need to spend to make sure this never happens again would be like saying, I sure hope my new truck doesn't rust out in 4 years, because just the method of manufacture, the price of the manufacturing, the location of the manufacturing means that if you do it once and you're going to do it yourself, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind and keep that fresh, because there's a good chance if you've got a large family, or let's say you've got a store or a commercial application, you're more likely going to be doing it again. But the good news is it's not a really, really complicated process.
So, what I'm hearing you say is there
You
is
still look
no
skeptical.
there is no eternal replacement. I'm on the loop for fixing it. And what is the lifespan of one of these plastic pieces? Is it like 7 years or what? The
I've
guy at
seen
the
some of them
the
10
guy at
or
the store said
12, maybe.
the guy at the store said 3 to 13 years, which I thought was crazy
Yeah.
town in terms of span. But is he right?
And well, I talked to a plumber just the end of last week, and he had actually just replaced three toilet tanks on toilets that were fairly new, fairly on the higher end, expensive range, because of the way the shapes and how they're now configured. You can spend anything you want to spend on them. But his thing was, if you put any type of a blue water, sanitizer, any of those kind of things in the tank, and these people happen to have an iron collector, and it's a cone shape. He showed me, and I don't remember the name of it, but you can buy it online, and it's supposed to take and collect the minerals in the water because it's magnetic. Well, what it does is it rusts out all of the internal workings, and as it does that, it also eats the rubber seals and the plastic. So these brand new toilets were probably 9, maybe 10 months old. They were new construction. They replaced the tank in all three of these brand new toilets because, and he said, and I've heard before, and we don't use that kind of a thing because we have a water softener to take the minerals out. But if you use any type of bleach cleaner, or the blue water, I don't even remember what those are called anymore,
Tidy
but any
bowl?
type of that chemical, it could have been. They hung over the side, and every time the toilet flushed, it dropped that little bit of blue chemical in your toilet. Those will eat up the inside workings probably in a year or so.
Okay,
So,
now wait a
like
minute,
he
because
said,
now wait a second, Dane. So there's the ones that you drop in the tank, and there's the ones that sit in the
hmm
bowl and go whirly whirly, right? Does it make a difference?
right,
Do the ones in the bowl, are they a little bit less abrasive, corrosive?
yes, because they don't stay in there as long.
Hmm.
The water swirls through there, and the concentration isn't as great, and it generally isn't in there as much. But back to that iron one, that's supposed to keep those iron stains out of the bowl. But
Oh.
generally, if you've got, one or two toilets in your house and you got a few people, that toilet's going to get flushed enough during the day that iron buildup is not going to be there anyway. And,
Hmm.
Eastern South Dakota is famous and fabulous for, we have some of the hardest water in the nation. We got more chemicals and iron in our water than anybody else. So,
So so
I'm sorry if you're the nationwide seller of those, but you shouldn't buy them.
so not so no tidy bowl. You're not a blue water fan. Am I? Is that right? Okay. Um,
No.
and and it's going to be plastic. That's what you're going to use. And
Hmm.
and tell me about how did the tank break? Because the washers broke out of the little water sealants. That's what broke on those tanks, on those toilets.
Well, it took out the gasket, the flapper, that allows the
Mm-hmm.
water from the tank into the bowl. It started to eat through
Ooh,
the edges of the rubber, so it didn't seal as well. So it was
ooh.
always running and always leaking. But
I
because of that cone thing that sits in the bottom, that's where all the minerals were gathering and starting to corrode the bolts.
hmm, hmm. So the replacements, I'm assuming it's going to cost anywhere, probably going to cost me about $20. Does one replacement somehow better than
Yeah.
another, or just get something that's you know meets the manufacturer's code in plastic and shrug your shoulders and say, "I'll see
Yeah.
you in 5 years." Okay.
Or
All
if you
right.
have your, favorite brand or something like that. But other than that, they're all very, very similar. The technology is very similar.
And I will say, if you've never ever done this, it's
And none of
probably
them
one.
none of them have the old.
None of them have the what now? The balls that go up. You mean?
Nobody's going to put in the ball float, because
Yeah.
the ball float gets a hole and it gets full of water and the
Yeah.
toilet runs
Yeah.
forever.
In fact, every fall I water my trees for like a day and a half straight, and I get a call from my a water company who says that you must have a toilet running. I get this every fall. They say no, and I thought that's an interesting service. If you let your toilet run, it somewhere sends off alarms at your local water supplier, and you probably will get a phone call. I didn't know about this. Now, if you have a toilet in your house and it runs, it is it's kind of a headache, but it's not that tough. You're going to have to shut the water off to the bowl, and the first thing they're going to learn is how quickly that thing silts up, because the hard water makes it harder to turn. So don't worry. You're supposed to every
Yeah.
month turn that on and turn that off again to keep it from silting up. I always forget. Anyway, you shut the water off to that. You flush the
Put
tank.
that on your calendar.
Yes, it's one of the things you got to do. Change your battery, flush your toilet, all those things. Anyway, you let the
Yep.
water drain all the way out of the tank. Flush it, flush it, flush it. It doesn't fill up again. Then you bail it out. Then you dry it out, and now you can take the guts out. Take a picture of it and bring that to your local hardware store plumbing supplier. The goal is, and I've never achieved this goal, Dwayne, the goal is you can go in and get the replacement part and not have to make a return trip. Okay. I'm told it's possible. I've never been able to do it myself. But once you get it
Yep.
back, the instructions are fairly straightforward. I want to say it's a half-hour job tops. Surprising.
Hmm.
The thing that's going to take the longest is you have to calculate how far you are away from the hardware store. So that is X times two, because you got to get back home, times 15 minutes. And then you're going to have to take that whole thing and multiply it again by two, because you're going to have to go back to the hardware store again. That's just the way life goes. So that's Behind the Curtain with Dwayne Bickett, talking about toilet guts. Now, on this particular show, we have guests come in. And by the way, if you want to be a guest on the show, if you have something interesting to say, then you are the person we want to talk to. So I had a chance to talk to Marty Hoffman. Marty Hoffman is a guy who he flips real estate, flips homes, stuff like that. He's accumulated some money. But that wasn't what interested me about Marty. What interested me about him was how he learned a work ethic as a young man and then passed it on to his sons. And that is what I would call, I mean, literally back breaking work, shearing sheep. And let's go to Marty and just hear him talk about it. Hello, I'm Jeff Gould with I Like That Story. I like to collect stories from people and I like to talk to experts who bring me perspectives. Now, I'm just going to tell you this right now. What is an expert? It's anybody who can give you some advice on your journey in life, and that is anybody. Your job in life is to engage people in conversation and pull out their wisdom. Some of these people will be obviously successful, as our guest is right here today. We'll get to him in a minute. But a lot of them will not be anybody that you would pay any attention to. But it's surprising what you can learn from those people. So we're talking to Marty Hoffman right now. Here's what I did not know until we just got ready to do the broadcast. And this is a sign of real grit and determination. Because when Marty was a kid, he sheared sheep. Talk about that a little bit, Marty, because that is hard work.
Yeah, so my dad was a farmer. I grew up in the 80s, and farming in the 80s was hard. And so my dad supplemented farming with shearing sheep. He started doing that. And that led to us kids going with him and helping out when we could. And eventually dad told us, I mean, he kind of told me, like, Marty, it's your year. I was 15. He said, it's your year, you're going to learn. And I actually, Jeff, for the first time, I felt like I was going to buck up to my dad. And I said, Dad, I'm not gonna shear sheep. And he said, Marty, until you do 1,000 head, I don't want to hear it. So
Okay. I'm just going to describe, if you've never seen this before, it's like taking like 100-pound feed sack, because sheep are kind of limp and they're compliant, but you got to sit that sheep on its rump. And then you sit behind it and you kind of put your knees into its back, and then you stoop over it and you shear it. And this is what my dad would say this all the time: weak mind, strong back.
Yeah.
Because your back locks up in a hurry. So the muscles that you must gain shearing sheep, because it's like you're just bent over from the waist down, doing some heavy moving, and your back, I mean, I can't even tell you. Marty, how long did it take you to get those back muscles where you wouldn't just lock up?
Well, that's what I would say, Jeff, is it was a lot of wisdom on my dad's end by telling me I had to do 1,000, because your back is not in shape when you start, and it gets easier. And as it gets easier, as you get better, you get to bend your body comes up and down, stretches more. And so you're bent over for less periods of time. So you do get in shape, but it hurts. And I don't know I've ever had a day of shearing where my back didn't hurt. So I'm glad you understand, because most people don't get it.
Well, and I think if the average person were to do 4, you'd say, oh my gosh, you do this all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, your back, it will lot. And then the other thing that you talk about with sheep, it's not an unpleasant, sheep are pleasant animals.
Yes.
But the aroma they exert is sheep dung. And if you were to take your average, let's say like Vaseline, and rub your hands with Vaseline, and it would get sticky, right?
Yes.
That's what sheep produce. That's called lanolin. It's very sticky, and what sticks to lanolin is sheep dung. So you are covered with this sticky, oily, greasy, sheep-smelling residue. Now, it's not like you don't smell like hogs. That's a whole nother aroma.
That's different. Yeah.
But when you walk into a cafe after shearing sheep, nobody's surprised. They look over and go, see those guys over across the room? I bet they were shearing sheep today, right?
Yeah, and all our clothes are shiny from the lanolin.
I tell you what, your hands are smooth as butter, though, aren't they? After that,
yes, yeah.
You know, and he talks about investing. We'll get him in the chat. If you're interested in turning things around and learning about flipping, he's a guy I talk to. Why? Because I just like the man, right? I never really buy the price. I buy the man. I think he's a man who knows what he stands for, and that is based off of that story. And Dwayne, what I like about that story is his dad told him what to expect. And he said, don't be defeated. Don't decide if you're done until you shear 1,000 sheep, right? All of us starting out in life, if we're lucky, we have a guy who's older who comes alongside and says, listen, it's going to be hard, but just stick it out this distance and it will get better. Have you noticed the same?
Absolutely. if you're willing to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the trouble with youth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a good story. It's a good lesson. And we'll do that for chapter 5. Now we move on to chapter 6. This is a chance where I get to talk about all the movies I watch. I didn't think I watched that much movies, but it turns out that I'm not that interested in TV shows. I don't have a lot of subscription services. So I just go through what's out there that's free, that only has a couple of commercials through it, and I see what movies I like. And the movie I want to talk about is something that got very little press, but it's a fairly recent movie. And the movie is called The Outfit. And let's watch this trailer, shall we?
You need to tell me what really happened in here tonight. Now.
You've been all over the world. You could have a shop anywhere you like, and yet you're here.
It doesn't terribly much matter where I am. I have my shears.
What else does a man need besides his shears?
This isn't art. This is a craft. You cannot make something good until you understand the customer.
Do we let all of our customers keep black boxes and back?
If we only allowed angels to be customers, soon we'd have no customers at all. Please, sirs, I don't want any trouble.
I need you to listen carefully. There are 1,000 blue boys out there hunting for this. And if they find it, I start shooting. You follow? Making matters worse, there are 1,000 racket boys hunting for it too. And if they find it, they start shooting. You follow?
Don't want to be involved in whatever it is you do.
You know exactly what it is that we do.
Whoa. Full house tonight, huh?
Have you ever heard of The Outfit?
The outfit.
It's a network of every big-time crew from Santa Monica to Coney Island. And tonight, they sent us a message. They're hiding something, my friend.
I'm gonna need that tape, pal, right now.
Why don't you try and take it? Gentlemen.
It's gonna be a long night.
Sew him up.
What? I can't.
Sew him up.
You need to tell me what really happened in here tonight. Now. You got 5 seconds to tell me what happened.
Open the trunk. What? Open the trunk and grab his arms, or I'm hiding 2 bodies.
5,
A number of things about me that you don't know.
4,
Where's the tape, Francis?
3.
I'm telling you the truth.
You want to survive the night? You look them dead in the eyes, and you pretend you're one of them.
Yeah, that's a good trailer. That's a good. I mean, like last week, they took away my man card when I talked about the Good House, Sigourney Weaver. I felt ashamed of my liking that movie. Although I will defend it if I could go back, which we won't, because now we're on to a really good movie called The Outfit. And Dwayne, as a guy in the crafts, you would appreciate this show because, first off, they do a tremendous job of showing how a tailor of the Savile Row type really goes about his craft, how he takes care of his tools, the measurement. That when you're watching this guy in the movie make a suit, you are deeply respectful of how and what an artist he is. And that's just the fun part of a guy being a tailor. But as you can see, there's a double entendre because he's not just making outfits, he's making outfits for the outfit, which is a couple of gangs, actually 3 or 4 different mobs, and they're all kind of fighting each other out. What is astonishing about this whole movie, virtually every scene takes place in that small room. There are very few outtakes except to show the outside of the building. Almost all of the dialogue, all of the action happens in that room. And you just sort of feel claustrophobic. It's a little bit like watching a play on stage because everything happens there. And the other thing that makes it a great movie to me, Dwayne, how many times have you seen a movie and you know what the next scene's going to be? I didn't see anything coming in that movie. That trailer did a great job of making you want to see the movie, and it didn't tell you a dang thing about what's happening in the movie. It came out, I want to say
But
like
you know
five.
it's intense.
Oh boy, it's intense. It's intense, and it's not super duper violent. You know, if the woman in your life or the person in your life likes romance movies, I'm not going to put them into a gender. They're not going to not like this movie because it's got some good character development. You don't see any of the scenes coming. I don't know why it didn't get seen by more people. It's an excellent movie. So I'm going. Have you seen the movie, by the way, Dwayne?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so now
I'd
add
never
it
heard of it before
add it to
until
the
now.
list. Add it to the list. That is the movie, The Outfit. Okay, now we are going to roll back and see which of our genius ideas made it to the final. We had two genius ideas. We had wind turbines that powered batteries, and we had silverfin, which is using Asian carp, an invasive species, to feed the masses by using super cheap game feeds. We harvest the fish by dragging tennis nets behind speedboats. They jump up and land in the tennis nets. That's my genius idea. Which one of the genius ideas wins according to our viewers? Booker? Okay. Wind turbine battery chargers. I've actually floated this idea to people who are in the car industry, and they say that the tolerances in car batteries are too fine and too delicate to just drop in batteries like you see in battery equipment. And although I guess I have to believe them, I don't believe that. Come on now. Come on now, right? Come on. Anyway.
Yeah, and you can't use cell phones because of the frequency on an airplane. It's been disproven for the last 40 years that cell phones have been around.
And do you remember that when there was a time when you put gas in your car, there were signs that said, "Do not use your cell phones." Completely debunked. That never was an issue. I don't know what that was about. So I think that my genius idea is going to show fruition. And then when that happens, you'll harken back and say, well, you know who talked about that first? It was America's storyteller, Jeff Gould. He's the one who told you first. All right. Final episode,
Do I
final
get an
chapter.
assist then for just mounting them directly on the car hood or directly on the car top?
No, that's a
Honorable mention.
you know what I love about your idea? You remember the deer whistles that you put on the hoods of car on the front cars? This is what you loved about that.
Talk about snake oil salesman.
You knew it didn't work, but it was only $7, and you thought, it makes sense. It could work, and it's only $7. Your idea of just putting a little beanie thing to kind of charge your car. I mean, it's genius. Who wouldn't spend some money on it? Even though, let's be honest, Dwayne, apparently perpetual motion is not a real thing. Sorry. Right. Okay.
You could spend your money on the curb scratchers then.
Oh, yeah. Don't send me down this tangent, but I'm going to go there in a hurry. Well, hey, Elon Musk. Hey, are you paying attention, Elon? These Teslas you're building, they drive on streets with curbs. Can you, for gosh sakes, just put a rim that doesn't scrape the curb? Can you do what everybody else does? Just make a tire fat enough that it's the tire that rubs off and not the super expensive rim. Elon, get back to me. We'll talk and have coffee. Now, final chapter, chapter 7, mailbag. Let's go to the mailbag. All right. Dear Jeff and Dwayne, are you ready? What is the best job in America right now if you're just starting out? Signed, Thad. All right. Thad's question. What's the best job in America to have right now if you're just starting out? Dwayne?
Anything involved in the trades.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is I was reading yesterday about, the college debate, the debt debate, the loan debate, how things are expensive. Are you going to have a job when you get done? We prognosticators are saying, well, in 10 years, this is going to be the hot thing. In 5 years, it's going to be the hot thing. Well, I personally don't believe that AI is going to take over the entire world. It will take over some segments. But call up AI and tell them that your toilet's dripping.
I'm sorry to
And
hear
they're
that,
going to rush
Dwayne.
right out and do it. Whereas,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
Jeff. I don't have capacity to help you.
maybe Google it. Yeah.
You
Can't
know,
help you.
hey,
So,
can you
but
pick
you
a
know,
spot
and
in the
so
trades? Can you say any? Can you be more specific? That's a big lift. The trades. Is there one that seems more possible to you to have a good future?
well, we have this debate within the trades too, and I'm going to really catch it from this. But if you want an easy job, be an electrician, because the first thing you're taught when you go to trade school to become an electrician, the instructors at the front, they put up a picture on the PowerPoint. It's a broom, and over that broom there's a circle with an X through it. And what your instructor will say is, as an electrician, you never ever use the implement. No matter where you go, no matter where you work, no matter who you work for, you never, ever, ever use a broom. And most of the guys, they learn that real fast. And that is one thing that we have given them the most problem with is they cut it and they drop it. And then if it's a lot, then they kick it. But for some reason, until you say, well, you guys can go ahead and go, but it's $200 a day back charge if you're not going to clean up. And I'm not saying you got to clean up after the concrete guys or the plumbers or the carpenters. Just pick up your own stuff.
So
because you know that they do pick up, because all of the little wire scraps that you can take in and recycle, and the scrap price is not great right now, but you can still, the little bitty scraps, they'll go around, pick up every single one of those and leave the rest to it lay.
That's like leaving money on the ground. Okay, this would be what I would suggest. I would suggest, if I was starting out, first off, I agree with Dwayne. I would go into the trades. But second, I would say I would find somebody in the who do you respect? Who's a small home builder, small whatever, who you respect. And then I would go to that particular person and say, listen, I'm looking for some advice because I'm thinking about getting into the trades. And listen to this, because I've used this with my son-in-law, got him into his job. When you ask for a job, you get advice. When you ask for advice, you get a job. The industry that is most interesting to me right now is 3D house printing, right? I don't know if it's houses for sure, but what they basically do is it looks like cake batter, only it's concrete, and they are printing out a house and then they're wiring it as it goes. Now, there's versions of this in other parts of the world. I think the Chinese have it looks basically like a big, huge, Lego set. You plug these components in and all the electricity's there and all the wires there. And it's basically building an apartment complex in like a day, because they just stack these components together. I do think that is probably the next stage of manufacturing as labor becomes harder and harder to find. And I think it would be pretty interesting to get in a crew of like 3 to 4 guys who are out printing sheds, barns, storage equipment, using 3D printers as described as concrete things. You know what I'm talking about, Dwayne, right? I think that would be an interesting thing to go into. And if it goes bust, well, at least you've learned a little bit about computers. You've learned about a new way to work things, and you're working with a small, tight group. And when you work with a small, tight group, you tend to learn more that cross over from where you're at. So if you happen to know a little bit about electricity, well, you're going to learn a little bit about bookkeeping, and then maybe how to do some CAD design, right? So that's my suggestion. I'd find a small mobile crew that just does a little bit of work around the country and you like what they do. I said printing houses. If you don't like that, I get it. Find a small crew and you like what they do. Follow them around and you've got 2 years to go to school. Only this school they're paying you to go to. You go to a college, it's going to cost you like 20 grand a year. You go with these guys. Well, I'd say the low end, it's going to be 45 grand you're going to make. And then there's a real chance to go upside. The final thing is, I would just say this: stop comparing yourself to people your age and start observing people who are older, especially in the trades. Because the hardest thing to do in the trades, and Dwayne, you can talk about this, is figuring out how you're going to get out of the daily physical exercise that's going to wear out the joints. How are you going to gradually become more of a supervisor so you're not wearing out your own knees, some other kid's wearing out his? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I got to learn that someday.
You do, my friend. You absolutely do. Oh my goodness. Holy cow. We're coming up past an hour. That went faster than I thought. Okay, so that's another week in the can. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take these segments, we're going to cut them up into little pieces. We're going to distribute them out in the various kind of medias. You'll see little segments showing up in the various Facebook and Instagram and whatever. Like, comment, and subscribe. It all comes back and starts here on Mondays. We will not be here next Monday. We will work on the Mondays after that and see if we can bring good guests, good conversation, interesting, uplifting talk. I'm Jeff Gould, America's Storyteller, along with Dwayne Bickett, Mr. Master Builder, the Micro Mike Rowe. Send us your
I
questions
thought
and
you
comments.
forgot about that.
Until next time, God bless.